Thank you, everyone. Really pleased to be here at this luncheon. I'll do my best to ensure I don't give you any additional heartburn when you're eating your lunch. But again, welcome to the show. So today, I'm going to talk about WebRTC and its applicability to the enterprise. Okay? So you may not know this, but every single one of you are wired for distraction. So what do I mean by that? You're all knowledge workers. You shift tasks every 3 minutes. Whether it's LinkedIn update, conference invite, email pop-up, social update. And this all adds up consistently for most employees that you actually are less productive by nearly 1/3 of your working day. Now that's quite surprising. A lot of people don't consider that. If you take an email, for example, if you don't actually deal with an email in the first 24 hours, you're most likely going to ignore that email. So, the problem we face is a disturbing fact of lack of productivity when us as enterprises are trying to be agile and real-time to compete in a very aggressive workplace today. Silicon Valley itself, is a perfect example of startup, innovation, aggressive competition. But how can you be agile in real time if your executives are concerned about 30% less of productivity of each employee? So that is the real problem that enterprises need to solve today. So how do we go about solving that as enterprises? Well, we need highly collaborative work environments. We need communications that are integrated with the tasks and capabilities sets that we're using in our workplace in a daily environment. So if I've logged into a compensation workbench tool and I'm doing a HR promotion for some individual, surely inside that application, I should have the right to engage and communicate with my HR representative while making that transaction happen. That is not the case today. I need to have my communications and collaboration fully integrated with the experience of the tasks that I want to execute upon. And this requires a very significant different approach to communications and how we address it today. If I look at my customers, there's two aspects of any enterprise. It's your employees that essentially create the products and the tools for you to sell. And you have your customers. The customers who essentially buy your products and require an immense user experience. The advent of social networking has become the perfect landing ground to criticize companies that don't give an intelligent, meaningful, efficient customer service. So how do we go about doing that? Let's take a specific customer. Their social graph, their working environment, their working life, they interact with so many different interfaces. But most importantly, the majority of these interfaces are web-driven. Now, what's slightly disturbing about this picture, for me at least, is that communications has traditionally been an island outside of this graph. Video and voice have historically been siloed off as a separate environment, as it has evolved over the centuries, independent of the web growth and social growth. This is where we believe that spirited technology like WebRTC can bridge that gap and bring collaboration, audio and video, to a web-based front end. Now, there's a bunch of technologies and factors and industry factors that always sort of happen at the right time. There's no shortage of conferences I'm sure you have all attended where it was the right technology, the right standards at the wrong time. It's happened to me many times throughout my experience. But here with WebRTC, the growth of web and the growth of social, there's a few other factors that really play into the success of this. Most enterprise applications are consumed via the browser. If you do a directory lookup, you do a HR transaction, you go to a wiki site, you go to your web page, internal, external, everything, nearly every application you use, even from the social aspect, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, all available via the browser. Of course, there's mobile applications, but as mobile catches up with the ability, to have more powerful communications from the browser itself, which is inevitable, then that environment will also change. The tablet era has arrived. Most individuals that I know have 3 devices. They have their PC, their tablet, their phone, maybe 2 phones. And you need to be able to express those communications capabilities and those applications and sales tools to your workforce and to your customers through those devices. What is ubiquitous across those devices? The browser. Enterprises are saving millions and millions of OpEx and CapEx expense by migrating their enterprise to all IP. Deploying sophisticated SIP border control capabilities allows you to route the traffic and keep it on net, saving your enterprise millions of dollars. This further accelerates for enterprises moving that traditional voice legacy over to a richer IP experience with voice and video. Another seamless trend that is happening at exactly the right time. Of course, with the move to IP and telephony and VoIP and web and interesting technologies like WebSockets allowing two-way communication, really opens up that door for a unified, combined experience. But one point to be known is one size does not fit all. You need good service creation capabilities so that you can embed technologies like WebRTC into large applications. But if you're a startup, your needs for applications are going to be significantly different. You may not have the P&L to buy commercial software. You may just need to build your own tools. And from the start, embed your audio and video needs and communications and collaboration capabilities into your company as you grow your company, as you grow your enterprise. Now, there's a variety of use cases that we can talk about. I'm not going to talk about them all, but just to give you a flavor. Web conferencing. A lot of web and video conferencing, you may want to do with just 3 or 4 employees. You may not want to reserve that high-def video conferencing room at that point. It may just be a bunch of agile developers who, unfortunately, are remotely separated. How can they quickly set up and enable, real work time environment across the web and across web browsers from a communications perspective? What about contact centers? I don't know about you guys, but everyone I talk to, if you're a customer, you hit the contact center because you can never get out of it. If you're a provider of a contact center for your corporation, you also hit contact centers because they cost you a fortune to support your customers that way. Recently, I just moved house and took on some satellite. I browsed the web. The instant chat came up. I started IMing with an agent. So I negotiated as hard as I could. I thought I got my deal. I said, right, now I'm going to call the call center. They'll get me a better offer. I kept the IMs. No, you will not. Our most exclusive offers are online, and if you order online, do not call our call center. We will not charge you shipping. We'll give you an extra 25 off a month. So they're driving customer behavior for me specifically not to even go near their call center. And why is that? Because we're now in a world where companies don't want to be associated by a phone number, a 1-800 call me. They want to be URL driven and a web experience that is interactive both from a presence, messaging, and next of all, audio and video. We see this with the Kindle Fire and the Mayday application, one-way video for customer support. Beautiful idea. The trend is happening, and it's happening now. If I looked at unified communications, do I really need a black phone on my desk? I never actually use it unless somebody calls me. Then I've caller ID and I know not to answer it. I use my mobile, I use video conferencing. I use email, presence, IM. Do I even need a soft phone anymore? WebRTC opens the door that I no longer need to license a soft phone. I don't need to buy a desk phone. I can save my enterprise significant CapEx and OpEx investments. And to give you examples of that, Oracle has its own unified comm suite. It's a high-end messaging platform that many of you use. We white label it generally. A lot of large customers. And we have WebRTC enabled it. We're doing audio and video sessions between WebRTC and non-WebRTC sessions. Session transfer between devices. Screen sharing. Why are we doing this? Because this is the next generation of unified communications and collaboration. PBX is old school. So how do I create value with WebRTC across my enterprise? Oracle is a huge suite of applications that it offers both on-premise and in the cloud. But irrespective of its sales and marketing, human capital, project management, CRM, HRM, ERP, there's one unique requirement across all of them, independent of the application. You need to communicate and collaborate. They're also task-driven, UI-based, web-based interfaces. We need to be taking communications and embedding communications into those applications as a feature, not as a service. Traditionally, we have treated communications like a service. You buy a phone, you have a service. You buy a tablet, you get a data connection, you have a service. We're now moving into the era with WebRTC where communications is going to become a feature of these applications. And that's where the opportunity lies. And that will be good for us as employees because back to my first slide, we're easily distracted. We can finish those tasks in the applications that we use to execute upon them. But even forgetting the applications that are there today, there's going to be new applications. And we encourage new applications. This is where innovation is going to come from. We need more innovation. But irrespective of what those applications are, what's important is you need to have a developer ecosystem and access to developers to either employ or help code. You need partners that you can work with to fulfill the end-to-end solution. Of course, standards. We all know how important standards are, especially for this browser communications. We need to be compliant to regulations in certain scenarios. So it's important to have a strong ecosystem as well, above and beyond just basic enterprise applications. So there's a lot of debate around, what is this WebRTC model going to look like? How should I deploy it? How do I bridge the gap from the traditional telco model into more of a web-flavored communications, collaboration, communications as a service, as a business process? Well, why should it look particularly any different? The web works just fine. VoIP works just fine. Browsers work just fine. So we expect a similar model as the traditional web model, whether it's WebRTC servers, application servers, of backends are implemented in SIP application servers, and all of the normal browsers in the front. The web-like architectures are elastic. They can scale. They are hosting cloud deployments, growing on demand. But there are a lot of challenges still. There's a lot of excitement around the technology. There's a lot of excitement about what we can do with it. But it does not define a lot of the back-end challenges. And this is where we need to work hard as a community to solve those. The ones that we have focused on specifically is around application control. When the app's in the browser, it has no control of the network itself. What happens if I switch from 3G to 4G, or sorry, even 4G fall back to 3G? What happens if I switch from my 3G to Wi-Fi? What happens if I accidentally hit the back button in my browser? Who is managing those sessions? And refreshing and rehydrating those sessions so that you have a seamless communications experience over the web. You need that. You need the seamless communications experience that everyone is used to on their mobiles, on their data connections, on their fixed phones, even in the browser. And that's a tough problem to solve. And it's something that we must solve, and we solve it in the back end. What about identity management? We know there's two classes of identity. There's your web identity. And technically, there could be three classes if you're working for a large enterprise. You have your web identity, maybe your social networks, maybe multiple of them. You have your enterprise identity, which is local to your corporation. And then you have telephony, or communications identity, which registers you in the network somewhere, whether it's a specific MISDN on your phone, or SIP URI. How do we manage the relationship between all of these identities? How do you manage providing the same communications and collaboration service across all of these identities if I change my medium? If I go from my iPad to my PC to my mobile, log out of Facebook, it's not a simple problem. Network security. There's a lot of concern around network security. What about overload protection? Denial of service? Who's going to manage the blacklist of malicious IPs that are coming just to push nasty traffic over your web? Is my answer to network security this little sticker that's patented when I get a new PC that I put over the front of my webcam? Is that really the answer? I don't think that's viable long term. They might get the patent right enough. But if you're rolling out WebRTC in a large enterprise corporation, you need network controls and border security to the utmost level. What about network controls? How am I going to control this traffic within my network? Let's say I have a one-on-one doing a video conference with my guy in Sweden. And our CEO's doing a video conference to Wall Street, announcing our numbers for the quarter. How do we ensure that the policies and quality of service is applied to the respective priority of those traffic? How do I apply policy rules to give priority for my CEO, CIO, and CTO to talk to each other in a secure manner? How do I implement RX interfaces that are dynamic from a policy enforcement perspective to change based on the business conditions we have? God forbid an earthquake hits San Francisco. That might change the policy of the communication that we use across the internet. Who's solving those problems? So with that, I just want to cover one product slide at this point. And again, Oracle Communications has recently announced a WebRTC session controller product that we're quite proud of. I'm sure many of you are aware of a company called Acme Packet that Oracle acquired probably 6 to 7 months back. And in that short time, we have worked together based on our historical DNA around web signaling and SIP signaling, web sockets, JSON, app servers, all of that good stuff, with Acme strength and border control, media, network security, and we've very quickly pulled together a product that is essentially a carrier-grade WebRTC capability that allows you to solve all of the previous challenges I just covered around QoS, around network control, etc., etc. We've got a client-side SDK for rapid development to plug it easily into your ecosystems. We have a dedicated signaling engine which handles the interworking between the web traffic and SIP traffic. A media engine that handles the interworking between the WebRTC nuances with the traditional back-end communications. And I invite you all to come and see our live demos. So I talked a little bit about our unified communications work that we achieved recently. It's now demoable over in the environment. You can see the front-end email system where you spend 80% of your working day interacting with, and how that blends in with WebRTC, with audio and video capabilities in that same environment without you having to flick over to a traditional communications silo that's independent of your enterprise working environment. We also have implemented a specific vertical application just to illustrate the power of WebRTC to all of the verticals. We've implemented essentially a real estate application. So it's modeled essentially on, I'm a Chinese businessman, investor, very keen to invest in property in Silicon Valley right now. And it's essentially a web-based application where me as a buyer can log in and interact with my real estate broker in San Francisco, and I can get video tours of property as we see them streamed from San Francisco over to China, and the business investor can determine, if this is a property he wants to invest in and buy. So more of a consumer-driven application, still illustrating the power and reach of WebRTC. We also have a few partners, demos as well, that are working with our back end. Please check them out. And with that, again, I hope I did not give you too much heartburn or indigestion during your lunch. Perhaps I was a distraction. But thank you for taking the time out and listening to this keynote. And please stop by and see some of the demos.